All right, I'm going to talk. So Dwayne talked about the fruitlet growth rate model and measuring fruits, and this is something that I've been doing for several years now, trying to put the principles of the research he did on that into practice. And um, I've talked about it before with you all. Like I said, I've been doing it for a few years, and I think, unfortunately, not nobody else has been doing it. And we've been saying that information is key to make good informed thinning decisions and chemical thinning decisions. And having the information you glean from the fruitlet growth rate model is very helpful. So I decided this was harder than I thought it was going to be. I wanted to make a cookbook recipe on how to do this. So this will be my attempt at showing you all how to do this and giving you the ingredients and directions on predicting apple fruit set using the fruitlet growth rate model. Like I said, this was a little harder than I envisioned coming up with this, and I'll probably revise it over time. So Dwayne already talked about this, but the reason to measure fruits and see how fast they're growing is to get a prediction of which fruits are going to fall off or upsize and which fruits are going to stay on or persist. Now you can get a seat of the pants feeling by going and looking at your fruits, but if you actually go out and measure them per a specific protocol, you can actually get some numbers. And the reason this works is because if you look at the fastest growing fruits and then you look at the rest of the fruits, if they're growing at least as 50% as fast as the fastest growing fruits, they're going to stay on. If they're growing slower, they're going to fall off. And Dwayne and his colleagues at Cornell did quite a bit of research to show this works. So similar to what Dwayne said before. All right, so here we go. This is the cookbook recipe. And all recipes start with a list of ingredients. These are the ingredients. I am going to go through these individually in a little more detail, but basically you need 5 tall spindle trees of the same variety, flagging tape and permanent markers, or you can use these flower cluster labels. You need to use 14 flower clusters per tree per my recipe, times 5 trees is 70 flower clusters total. You need a digital caliper, and you need one of two. These are kind of option 1 and option 2. You can either use this MaluSim app, or you can use the Fairy Spreadsheet and the Orchard Tools app, okay? So there's the ingredients. If you go out and get them all together right now, you'll be all ready to go post petal fall, okay? Briefly, let me elaborate a little bit. This really only works on tall spindle type apple trees, okay? You don't need to be, or you could, but it doesn't work as well on semi-dwarf central leader trees. So I think many of you have tall spindle out there now. It's also, when I say the same variety, it also, high value varieties like Honeycrisp, Gala, or Fuji. I don't do it on Macintosh. I don't want to say waste my time. I don't bother to do Macintosh or McCown or Cortland, for example, but you could. But I think the high value varieties where it's good to get, and also biennial varieties where you want to have an average crop every year and not go into biennial bearing is good. Before I forget, I'll get to that in directions. Okay, so you got those 5 tall spindle apple trees. You need some flagging tape so you can label the trees. Don't forget the Sharpies. And you can use the flagging tape to label the individual clusters, or I found these little Avery labels that I can put in a printer and print all my labels up ahead of time, work well too. You need a digital caliper. They're a dime a dozen. The one on the left there is one I bought at Lowe's. The one on the right is a $10 one I bought at Amazon. So you want to have a couple of those kicking around in case one breaks. And you need, at least I think you need, either the MaluSim app. Now, this is available either on the Apple Store or the Android, the Google Play Store. It's an application just like any other application you can download on your smartphone or your tablet. It takes a little bit of setting up and initial learning how to use it, but once you get used to it, it's not too bad. But they're both free and readily available, okay? So you need either MaluSim, or you can go this route. You can download this spreadsheet. It was developed by Tom and Joe Ferry up in Ontario. It's a modified version of what I call the Schwalier spreadsheet. I like this one better because you don't have to mark the individual fruits. It's a little simpler to use. And this Perennia is the kind of private extension service up in Nova Scotia, has developed this nice little app that allows you to enter the data right in the field. And then you have to export it and put it in the spreadsheet. So either the MaluSim app or these two things, in addition to all those other ingredients. Okay? I'm going pretty fast here, but I will provide you with resources afterwards. I'm writing a fact sheet on how to do this too. All right, so you got the ingredients, you're all ready to go. So after bloom, you want to tag the trees, tag the clusters, and then you begin measuring fruits. Measure at 4 to 7 day intervals, entering it into either the MaluSim app or Orchard Tools. Run the Fruitlet growth rate model in either the MaluSim app or the Fairy spreadsheet. And that will give you some results on predicting fruit set to determine the need for further chemical thinning sprays. And if it all works out, you can sit back, relax, enjoy your the fruits of your labor, so to speak. Okay, little details on each one of these. Again, I said you've got to use tall spindle apple trees, flag 5 representative trees in the block, same variety. You do have to note, you have to count the number of flower clusters on each tree. That's not the individual flowers, but the flower clusters. So you quickly count those. These trees probably had 140, 160 flower clusters on them, believe it or not. The models need that information to run the model correctly. You also have to decide how many apples per tree you want at harvest. On these Honeycrisp trees, I think I said I wanted 80. 80 Honeycrisp apples left to harvest. Okay, you got your 5 trees marked with flagging tape there at the base of the tree. You counted the flower clusters. You've determined a target crop load in your mind. You need to go and find 14 spurs, and you have to label them with flagging tape. That's the little Avery label I use, okay? You want to distribute you want to do some in the top of the tree and some in the bottom of the tree. I like to do roughly 8 in the top and 6 in the bottom, especially if I'm using the Fairy spreadsheet, because we know that what happens in the top of the tree is slightly different than the bottom of the tree. So that's kind of useful information in targeting your thinning spray if you need to. I think Wynn will talk about that a little bit later. Next, okay, after you get all that done, you start measuring the fruitlets. It's fairly simple. You, with your digital caliper, beginning at about 6, 7 millimeters after your petal fall thinning spray, perhaps just prior to what you're thinking about that 8, 9, 10 millimeter spray. You don't need to mark the fruits. Both the MaluSim app and the spreadsheet sort the fruits largest to smallest automatically for you, assuming that every measurement, the largest fruit is usually the largest fruit in the next measurement. So how often you repeat the measurements, it's up to you. You can do it as often as you want. You can do it daily if you want. But I think typically at 4 to 7 day intervals, depending on the temperature and when chemical thinners are applied. So if you measured this at 6.75 millimeters and you decided it's time to put on a chemical thinning spray at about 9, 10 millimeters, you could put that spray on a day or 2 later after measuring, then go out and remeasure 3 or 4 days later to determine the effect of that chemical thinning spray. And as I said, you can either use the MaluSim app, which has a voice input feature, so you can take the measurements and input the data yourself. It works reasonably good. It could be better. Or it has a little keyboard. You can punch that data in. Or you can use the Orchard Tools app to enter the data. And actually, I've got a couple of pictures of this. On the right is the MaluSim app. Keeps track of the trees and the clusters for you. If you push the little green speaker icon or microphone icon there, you can actually read the number into it. On the left is the Orchard Tools app. It's got a nice keyboard. You can you have to set these up front a little bit. It takes a little time. That's not too bad to get them ready to go. So you can see in the Orchard Tools app, you got tree 1, cluster 2, fruit 2. You punch in 7.8 millimeters and on to the next one, okay? I haven't used Orchard Tools, but I plan to use it this year. And then once you do that, once you get your measurement on a certain date, you run the Fruitlet growth rate model. Now, this is an example of the MaluSim output. I'm going to get to more of this in a minute, but it instantly gives you the results. Now, this was after 4 measurements. It doesn't show the initial measurement. So this is from last year, but I'll talk about this a little more. If you're using the MaluSim app, you're all done. You've got your results right there. If you're using the Orchard Tools app, you have to export that as a CSV file, email it to yourself, and copy and paste the data into the Fairy spreadsheet. If you're not real familiar with spreadsheets, that can be a little daunting, but it's not too bad, and run the summary. Again, I plan to do this year to see how it works out for me. I haven't done it, but I hear it works quite well to do it this way. So this is why you should be doing this, okay? This, I can't remember. This was either Gala or Honeycrisp last year. At the very beginning, I took a measurement. Your first measurement doesn't show up. It waits till you take the second measurement 4 or 5 days later. And at that point in time, it said it was predicting that I had 230 fruit setting. Remember, I only want 80 apples on these trees. So without further intervention by a chemical thinning spray, I'm not sure what would have happened. It might have still got some thinning because we had that big carbohydrate deficit. But anyways, a chemical thinner went on, and then I went out and measured again, and all of a sudden, whoa, look at this. Now it's saying my predicted fruit set is 86 fruit. My target was 80. Well, obviously, I'm not going to go out and put another chemical thinning spray on. But it could have been a different result depending on the year. I might have still had, it might have still been saying based on the Fruitlet growth rate model that there was 200 fruit setting, in which case I would know I have to go out and put another thinning spray on. So trying to make this as cookbook recipe simple as possible for those that want to try it. And like I said, I went through this fairly fast. It's easy for me because I've done it before, but I will be developing a fact sheet, and I'll reference that in Healthy Fruit or whatever that you can go back and look at and get the recommendations. So I put in a plea for you to try this. At least a few of you try it. Takes a little time. You might need some help, but you could do it yourself. And I think like Dwayne said, having this information, Dwayne has said, before that just going out and measuring some fruits can be helpful too. But I think if you're going to go to that trouble, you might as well go through the whole procedure. And it's not that bad if you follow the directions once you get used to it. So I'm open to questions or comments. If you need any help or want to give it a try this year, let me know, and we can run through it. So with that, I think I'm done.